Welcome to Startups for the Rest of Us. I'm your host, Rob Walling. In this week's episode, I talk with Pierre de Wulf, the co-founder of ScrapingBee, about how they mostly bootstrapped to $5 million in ARR and an 8-figure all-cash exit. It's an incredible story. We talk about some of their early struggles growing, what changed when they went from growing, I think, 7K of MRR in a year, and then suddenly grew almost to $1 million ARR over the next 15 months. And something changed there. We dig into that early in the episode. We find out any trophies that Pierre bought with the proceeds from their exit. We talk about their thought process for deciding when to sell, why to sell, as well as some of the inner workings of the exit and just how hard it can be to sell a company. If you know Pierre from ex-Twitter, you've seen his very thoughtful tweets about bootstrapping and indie hacking, and he has what I consider a pretty insightful thought process about what it takes to be successful in this game. Before we dive into the conversation, I am doing a live Q&A on Thursday, July 17th. You will only get access to that if you are a member of MicroConf Connect. MicroConf Connect is our amazing online community for bootstrapped and mostly bootstrapped founders. Inside Connect, we have founder-to-founder discussions about what's working today in SaaS. We have live workshops and AMAs, including the one with me on July 17th, and we have access to our content vault with recordings from every previous MicroConf event. MicroConf Connect is $50 a month, and we charge for it to keep the quality up. It's a gate that keeps the quality of the founders inside very high, and it allows us to afford to pay a moderator to keep the conversation going and to make sure it's super high signal to noise. microconfconnect.com if you're interested in checking it out. And with that, let's dive into my conversation with Pierre. Pierre de Wulf, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hello, Rob Walling. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, man. I think a lot of folks who listen to this show will know you from ex-Twitter. You've been, in the indie hacker community pretty prominent for many years now. And you and your co-founder, Kevin, started ScrapingBee. And you recently sold it for an 8-figure all-cash exit, no stock option shenanigans, as you put in your tweet. But you've even had, other folks, I think it was a month or two ago, I went through one of your tweets that was something like, 12 or 20 hot takes about indie hacking that you may not agree with or whatever. And I was like, hey, I think I agreed with almost all of them. We were in agreement, and your wisdom, I think, has, been helpful for a lot of folks. Last time that you were public about ScrapingBee's revenue, and ScrapingBee was mostly bootstrapped, effectively bootstrapped, the only money you took was from Tiny Seed. Last time you were public about it, you were at 5 million ARR, and that's with 2 co-founders and a very small team. I don't know, a handful of folks you're working with.
4, yeah.
4. So it's, highly profitable. Before I get to how did it feel when the money hit your bank account, and I want to know, what you bought, the crazy trophies you bought, why sell it all? Why not just run it forever?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Definitely something we talked a lot about with Kevin. And I think there's 2 things. First, what this phrase, I don't remember who said it. I think it was Naval, but most startup doesn't die because of money or stuff, but most startup dies because founders are tired, We've been running ScrapingBee for 5-6 years and doing web scraping for 10-12 years. And we were not to the point where we were sick of it, but we were getting tired of doing web scraping. We wanted something new. And then the second point is the only way to know the top is to reach the top, So ScrapingBee was in very good position to be sold in terms of revenue, growth, and all. And we didn't want to wait for the growth to slow or to even decrease before selling it. We also had, you change during all your life, but between 25 and 32, 33, you change, your priority change, you start to settle, to build a family. And so, all of this combined we thought it was a good time to sell it and to start the process.
Yeah, that makes sense. You might be quoting me. So I have this quote that I've said several times where funded companies fail when they run out of money and bootstrapped companies fail when the founders run out of motivation.
Yeah.
I think that might be it. Yeah. It was me. I've tweeted that and I've said it on the show before because that's usually what happens, especially if you're bootstrapping. Like, why would you stop? But, if you do plateau or you've done it for 10 years, I mean, I've started feeling that same thing frankly, with Drip. And at one point with MicroConf, although I have renewed energy around MicroConf and Tiny Seed. But yeah, so I think that makes a lot of sense. Now I want to ask you the big question, the end of the hero's journey, the day the cash hit the bank account, you refresh the bank balance. I bet you and Kevin were in touch and you're just waiting for millions of dollars to go and more money than you've ever seen or probably ever imagined you would have. What would describe that feeling to me?
So it was very funny. It was a bit anticlimactic in a sense that the whole closing day was done remotely. So we had lawyers in the US, investor in the US, so Tiny Seed. We had the buyer in Lithuania and us in south of France. So you do all those DocuSign, you have proof of the buyer send a proof of wire transfer. And then you just wait. So it was for 3 to 4 hours. And when I actually received the notification refreshing the bank account, I was just relieved. I didn't want to jump. And actually, I took a nap. I took I think a 2-hour, 40-minute nap because I had slept only 4 hours the night before. And it was very, very stressful, those last few hours, because you have all those lawyers talking about the last few details of the SPA, so the final agreement. So it was a lot of relief, actually. Then you have to start announcing stuff to the team, although they knew we were getting acquired, but you're making it official, you're introduced to the acquirer Slack channel. So it was, a pretty hectic day, a very good one. Yeah, just a lot of relief. I remember afterwards, after my day was over, I just took a 1-hour walk. I called my parents and my grandfather to tell them that it's over, it's been sold, and this time it worked. Yeah, that was anticlimactic, but a beautiful day for me.
And did you send Kevin an emoji of you flipping dollar bills or anything? Yeah.
So for Kevin, actually, I can probably share it, but the day we closed, his wife was actually delivering his baby, So it was a very hectic day for him too.
Wow.
So
talk about.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So he followed the process from afar. Of course, I went to the maternity. So I dropped some flowers because it was just a few minutes from home. But we celebrated through Slack.
I'm glad. Yeah, exactly. Slack. Okay, so after you sold, we're going to get into what ScrapingBee is and kind of, more of your story. But I know I saw on Twitter at some point that you had bought yourself a bunch of Legos, Lego sets. Was that after the exit or was that after hitting 5 million ARR?
Yeah, so it was after the 5 million ARR. So I like, just buying big box and just storing them, hoping the value goes up.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I was able to just buy everything I wanted. Because Lego are expensive, but it's not like cars or jewelry or whatever. So at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. So yeah, it was just fun stuff.
People talk about the different levels of wealth where it's like going to fast food, when you're a teenager or frankly growing up, we just didn't have money. So even fast food, it was like, it was rare we did it, right? But at a certain point, maybe you have $50,000 in the bank, going to fast food, you don't look at the menu prices anymore, right? You just buy what you want.
Yeah.
And there's a point where you go to a restaurant and you don't look at the menu prices anymore. And then you go to an expensive restaurant and you don't do, and then your hotel or your Airbnb, you just stop kind of looking at the price very much. And obviously for some people, maybe it's sports cars or whatever, but getting to the point of Lego being, being that it's pretty good.
Fun
this
stuff.
Is what, thank you HTML.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Exactly. Yeah. This was my thank you HTML tweet, basically.
Yeah. All right. So Let's talk about ScrapingBee. So you're H1, tired of getting blocked while scraping the web. The ScrapingBee web scraping API handles headless browsers, rotates proxies for you, and offers AI-powered data extraction. Now, you and Kevin started this, what was it, 2018, 19?
2019.
2019. But this was not your first idea. Like,
No.
you tried B2C, you tried B2B. In fact, you did a really good MicroConf talk on YouTube that we'll link up in the show notes. And you gave it when you guys were about 1.5 million ARR at the time. So if they want to hear about how you found the idea of ScrapingBee, they can go do that. But having done B2C, B2B, had failures, and then had this outsized success, is there any, like, what are the differences? Like, why did ScrapingBee work when these previous ideas didn't?
So I think first main reason was, I would say, founder product fit or founder audience fit, in a way that our first serious SaaS was price monitoring tool for e-commerce owners. We were, it was at a time where drop shipping was very hot. We built a tool allowing to monitor prices and all, but we didn't know e-commerce, and we didn't know to talk to e-commerce people. We didn't know where those people hanged out on the web, what their problem were. So we basically built a product waiting for a solution, waiting for a problem. What changed with ScrapingBee is, like, with Kevin, we were a developer and we did a lot of web scraping. So it was a mix of dog fooding, because we used a product like ScrapingBee when building pricing bot. And product audience fit. Like, Kevin had a book and a blog about web scraping in Java, which was quite popular in that niche. Afterwards, it sounds very obvious, like, why haven't we started with that? But I think what changed the most, the audience, and knowing the people you want to sell it to.
Do I remember correctly that you and Kevin had authored a book about web scraping?
Yeah, he did, about web scraping in Java. Yeah, he had a blog and a book. Yeah.
He did. Because I remember when we interviewed you for TinySeed, because you were early, you were like 1K MRR maybe, which is like right on the edge for us. But A, we really liked you and Kevin, and B, this book, it's like, oh, you wrote a book, a bunch about this. And I think you guys had kind of a small audience in the web scraping space because of that. And we're like, you know what? We're gonna take a bet on these guys, and it was part of it, and it's, again, if you listen to the show at all, people know I don't put a lot behind having an audience per se, right, to build SaaS, because it's like you can only sell to a very small portion of that, and it doesn't actually get you very far. But that's not, we weren't betting on the audience. We were betting on the two of you being these smart people who had built this, had launched it, had some kind of wounds under your belt in terms of having some failures, and had written a book and had gotten it out there. And then my memory was, even after, I have some notes here from producer Ron, that after a year, after the TinySeed year, you were only at about 8K MRR. But then 15 months after that, you were at 1 million ARR. So do you remember, like, what changed in that? Yeah, because that's a striking difference.
Definitely. So what I remember is that for the first few months of ScrapingBee, so we tried to leverage Kevin audience, but as you said, it was not such big audience, and here knowledge of the space was more valuable than having an audience. But it was very, things that don't scale. We were hanging out on forums, Reddit, and stuff like that. And then what really changed during the year we grew very fast is that we started writing a lot more content. So first 8 months, we spent a lot of time writing some very good content, but the output was quite small because it was only Kevin and I. And then, so thanks to TinySeed money, of course, and also to a few advice that made us focus on what works. We just decided to go all in on SEO, and that's what we did and what really fueled that growth. Then, of course, we were doing a tons of product optimization, onboarding and stuff, but at the end of the day, what really mattered the most was the SEO, and it was thanks to Kevin, because we split roles. So we're both developers, but at some point we were like, okay, Kevin, you're going to do marketing, I'm going to do product and tech. And Kevin wanted to do that. And so I remember it was during COVID. And so it was a Ahrefs course, blogging for businesses, which they have just made free during COVID. And yeah, from there, it was just nonstop finding content writer, publishing good content, listening to Ruben Games' advices a lot. He helped us a lot. I know he helped Kevin a lot. And yeah, that was the main point.
I remember that now. And I do remember, folks who listen to the podcast will know Ruben is my go-to for freemium, for SEO, for content, for hot takes on AI and such. And that was a good part of, I think for you guys being part of Tiny Seed, is that Ruben is in batch 2 from 2020, I think, and is very generous, especially with Tiny Seed founders, about his detailed knowledge, because he knows that you're not going to, he's not going to go on Twitter and write out everything that he does, right, or share it with a random person, but he is willing to kind of give up the real details, right, of how it's really done.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
As are you guys now. It's great. When I have someone who I see a Tiny Seed founder who content or SEO is working for, I'm like, all right, talk to Kevin and Pierre, talk to Ruben. There's a few others. There's content obviously is a very powerful force for bootstrappers because it scales so well. And that's something that you guys did I want to call out is like when you and Kevin were writing everything, it was a little slow going, right? Because you can only produce so much, but you figured out how to do something that a lot of folks don't, which is how do I hire writers and or editors who can kind of produce a content machine rather than just the founders doing it. And it's easy to do that poorly. It's easy to hire people that turn out articles. I've done that myself in the past. So what was that process like to build that engine, that content engine because we as founders, like especially folks who are like yourself, who are really good on social media, who are really clever and who have a lot of hot takes that are interesting and get people thinking and talking, our standard for this type of stuff is really high. Like you're not going to publish an article about web scraping using Node or JavaScript or whatever that doesn't meet your standard. And that standard is a 9.5 out of 10, right? So how did you possibly build that engine?
So first thing is that, our audience were developer and we wanted to build, skyscraper techniques. So the big possible stuff you can write, educational content. And so first we started looking for developers who wanted to write and not for writers who knew a bit how to code. So with that in mind, we're able to have writers who were really, in terms of technology, like technologically very top-notch, they knew everything there is to know about their language framework or whatever. Then, and I'm pretty sure it was Kevin's idea, we hired an editor. So basically this one was a writer who knew a bit about web scraping, but doesn't matter. And his role, and I think he's still working with us to this day, was to review every single piece of content and making them more enjoyable. Sometimes a writer will not be English speaking, English will not be first language and all. So really focusing on developers who want to write, then have an editor, review everything, then have a bit of SEO knowledge to optimize it. And you just keep going. And so we were not publishing a lot of content, only 3 to 4 blog posts per month, I think, which is way less than what some companies are able to do, but it was sufficient to be, at some point, I think we were the second biggest web scraping blog on the internet. So that worked.
The articles were long, was my memory. Is that right? Like 4,000 words, 3,000?
Yeah, so I think 20 minutes reading time, so that's about that. And we did one for, once you have something that works for Python, you can do all the language. Once you've done the language, you can do the framework and some library. So it's like really easy to duplicate Content ID. Issue started when everyone started doing the same. So because, SEO is a zero-sum game. There is only one Google page rank 0. So we had to diversify. But for the first 2 years, that worked very, very well.
What's interesting is that there's a good chunk of Tiny Seed companies that take the money and they say, the money's great, but I didn't actually need it. What I really wanted was the community, the mentorship, the advice. But it sounds like the money actually did make a difference for you guys.
It made a mental difference because it was during COVID. We had only, 15K in the bank when we received it. We were lucky enough because growth meant we haven't actually touched it. But if we hadn't received the money, we wouldn't have spent it. I don't know if I'm clear, but it's like, it gave us mental safety and a reassurance that, we can spend a bit more, that we can pay ourselves, finally, a decent amount of money. So money helped a bit to give mental clarity. And support and mentoring helped the most. Basically, we had access. So again, it was COVID, lockdown. We were in a countryside, France, with Kevin. So not the perfect place and time to talk with people who build SaaS. And in the Slack, we had access to expert in everything, SEO, pricing, copywriting. I remember Yana Patch helped a lot there, ARR for pricing, and many other people who just gave us free 30 minutes, 1 hour consulting call. And it was very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask was like, what, obviously you have this great tweet from yesterday and you said getting funded through Tiny Seed was a game changer for ScrapingBee. We kept the best benefit a bootstrapper can have, optionality. We were never forced to raise more, but we always knew we could if we wanted to, and it gave us enough funding to meaningfully accelerate our growth. But the best part, the advisors, the mentors, the experts that make up the Tiny Seed community were here for us when we needed it most. So today, I guess we're coming full circle as I'm very happy to become an investor in Fund 3, which makes me and ARR, I love it. It's such so great to build your own investors. But it sounds like it all made a difference. Like the money made perhaps less of a difference, I guess, but the advisors, the mentors, the experts, and the advice got you there faster, right? See, I believe you would have gotten there eventually, but maybe it would have taken you extra years, or maybe it would have been slow enough that there would have been other competitors. You don't know, right? You don't know the sliding doors.
Yeah, you don't know. We talked about it with Kevin, and I think last year we said, I think Tiny Seed made us save 2 years. And at that time, the company was 4 years old. So it made us grow twice as fast, which is huge, especially when time is your most valuable asset.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. That's really good to hear you put a number to it, and it's, I don't know, it just makes me happy because that's why we do it, is to help people get there faster. Now, was this pretty steady growth once you started that trajectory with the content SEO? Did you have any? Very
steady.
Yeah, you didn't have any plateaus, right?
We have early sign of plateau. So because in SaaS, if you analyze churn and basically when your growth is not growing, we're going to get a plateau because of churn. So we had a plateau coming in, and at that time we made some meaningful update to the product and to pricing because we were commodity product, and we bought the idea that you shouldn't care about your competitors' prices and all, but I think it's just, for us it was completely wrong. You cannot just ignore it, especially in our market. We're commodity products, so you need to have a sexy pricing table if you want people to at least give you a chance.
So let's talk about the sale process, the exit. You and Kevin got together and decided it was time to sell. Was there, I want to ask you, how did you decide it was time to sell? I guess is the first thing, and then talk a little bit about how it actually went down.
So actually, if we're talking about the early start of the process, it was 18 months ago when we sat down with Kevin, we saw revenue, growth, churn, margin, business was in good state, we were a bit exhausted. So we started a full process with Discretion Capital, our M&A advisor. We went through the process of building a pitch, selling a story to potential acquirer, and doing some interviews, and then getting some offer. And then we received a big, frightening cease-and-desist from one of the 5 biggest tech companies in the world. Of course, everyone got frightened about it. We had to abort the sales process. We were like, okay, it's not going to happen this year. We want to try again in a year. What can we do to make the process smoother next year? So actually, it was a year-long process. So two big things we did was to hire more, to standardize operation, document a bit everything, and to have all the accounting stuff ready, in GAAP format. We're a French company, so it was a bit of work for us, but very helpful. And so fast forward a year, we're in August with Kevin, and he's like, okay, I want to start again to sell the business. Number were still good. We talked with ARR, was like, okay, let's do it again. And so obviously that time it was a bit faster because the whole pitch was ready. The accounting stuff were all there. And so the way it works is like you prepare a pitch, you prepare some name you want your advisor to reach out to. Then the advisor, so here Discretion Capital, they were our salesmen. So basically talking to all those people, being like, okay, ScrapingBee want to sell. Are you interested in it? You can sign this NDA. Here are all those numbers. They filter out unserious buyers. Then you start to book some interviews with them. So, people want to know the team, ask questions such as, why are you selling? Where do you see web scraping industry coming forward in the next few years? How much you want? For how much do you sell the business from? And where ARR or Scott would answer every time, we're not in the valuation business, so we don't give valuation advice. And so we just let the buyer give the first offer. And then you get the LOI, you ship around a bit, try to negotiate. And then you sign the first LOI. So between first pitch and signing of LOI, I think it took 3 to 4 months. And then starts the due diligence. So
now, did you get multiple offers?
Yeah, we got 3 multiples offer. So 2 that you could consider strategic ones and 1 from a private equity fund. What was interesting is that the private equity fund offer was very seducing for a private equity fund. Usually their multiple are much lower. But we ended up working with Oxylabs group because we really wanted to sell to someone who knew the industry. Because web scraping is very particular. There's some legal risk when you're doing web scraping. Lots of companies are not happy that you're doing it. And so we didn't want to relieve what happened to us 1 year prior. And so selling to the biggest actor in this industry obviously smoothen out the risk because he knows about everything. He had the same struggles as we used to have, and he wanted to really acquire the company to make it grow bigger and better. So this was very what seduced us, and it was also a full cash offer, which was the best for us.
Yeah, which makes total sense. So that's, it's ARR Volset, who many folks who listen to this podcast know. He comes on for Hot Take Tuesdays, and my co-founder with Tiny Seed. DiscretionCapital.com if you're between about 2 and 20 million ARR, they only do the sell side M&A. So they're always, on the founder side. And I know you had a great experience with them.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't want to gloss over the cease and desist that you received, because the first time you receive a cease and desist, it feels like it's going to be the end of the world. And what I tell Tiny Seed founders, because I believe we talked about it, but it's like across 200 and how many do we have now? 212 investments, 204 investments, I think, just through Tiny Seed. We see a cease and desist at least once a quarter, sometimes every 2 months, just because it's a law of large numbers. Now, we also see co-founders implode about once a quarter, and we see, an app get hacked once a year, maybe, and it's just large numbers. So for us, while we know it's scary, it is usually not business ending. Now, that's not to say it can't be, but it usually isn't. Usually there's a way around it, whether you change what you're doing or whether they just leave you alone or whatever. So I know you can't go into extreme detail about exactly what happened, but did that just kind of go away? Did you respond to it at all?
Yeah. So, we received, it was a big cease-and-desist, like really a business-threatening one. Like they were asking for full code base, full customer base, full revenue base, scraping their website. They wanted us to stop scraping their property. And, it can go very far. Like the worst case scenario was really us in jail and the company closed. So that was a bit frightening. But what happened is that first we were advised by very good lawyers who drafted very good answer. But the most critical part that they sent those kind of cease and desist to all the web scraping companies in the world. And one of the biggest web scraping companies, won against them. And it was very public. So they no longer had a case with us because we would just say, look, what you're reporting us.
Case law.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is what saved us. Not saved us, but what closed the issue. We had plan B. We could have always stopped scraping this website. We would have lost, 10, 15% revenue. But that was what happened. So it took 6 months for it to settle completely. But it settled by them no longer answering to us. So it died. It died.
As they usually do. They either kind of settle, as you said, you need your plan A, B, C, D, and E. Plan A is we just tell them to go F themselves and then they back off, right? Plan B is we send them some documentation and we maybe adjust our approach. And plan C is we just stop scraping the site and we lose 10 to 15% of it. That's like the worst case almost.
Yeah.
Not the worst case, as you said. The worst case you wind up in jail, but that's just so, they don't actually want that.
No, but it was a worst case, like just drafting anti-piracy act in the US and in California law. And
it's scare tactics. Scare tactics. Yeah. So then due diligence, let's walk through this part because this is the part where, you talk due diligence and have you had a more painful time of your life? Like how was due diligence for you? Were you stressed? Was it as awful as I often make it out on this show?
Yeah, so it was funny because I remember the day we signed the LOI, so the day the due diligence started, you sent me a PDF of your exit book, which I've read during my flight back from Phoenix.
Because this was before it was published. This was several months before.
Yeah. It was very helpful. And I've read about this due diligence part, how awful it is. So it was bad, but two things made it easier for us. I think three things. So first, I had a co-founder. And so honestly, without Kevin, it would have been much harder, especially because Kevin is much calmer than I am. We had lots of accounting issue during due diligence. No big deal, but it was French accounting and also lots of questions regarding this. And so Kevin worked on it very well. It really made due diligence lighter. Secondly, we were prepared because we've read a lot about it, your book, blog post, Discretion Capital, we had some document ready. And third, the acquirer was really not friendly, but cooperative, like not trying to find the slightest default to try to retrade or not trying to nitpick the smallest detail, trying to give a lot of pressure. I mean, it was serious business. It was important stuff. It needed to be done, but we never felt we were working with someone who didn't want to welcome us very soon. So those three things made it very stressful, but probably not as bad as some founder had it.
Yeah. And how long was DD?
It was quite long because of those accounting stuff. So the way it worked, basically we had an audit cabinet just redoing our 4 years of accounting from the ground up. So it lasted, I think, 3 months.
3 months. Oh, that's long. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's long and stressful because you just every day you wake up and you don't sleep well, and B, you then wake up tired. And every day I'm thinking, is this the day it all just goes sideways? Is this the day they back out? Is this the day they find something? Is this the day we screw something up? Is this the day that the stock market drops by 30, 40%? Just any black swan event can happen.
Yeah.
A terrorist attack, like God forbid, just anything can happen. And suddenly these deals don't go through. And so you're like, I want this to go as fast as possible. Did you feel that as well? Because I felt that the entire time.
Yeah. I was very afraid of that. So very afraid of receiving another cease and desist. So although Oxylabs was web scraping company, like I remember every letter we received during those 3 months, I was scared to open it. Like, is it the IRS asking for an audit? Is it, I don't know, a big tech company sending cease-and-desist? So this was very frightening, especially because we had it happen. So we almost sold the business 2 times. So one time cease-and-desist, but the time before we were 2 weeks before closing the business. And we actually received an email from the acquirer telling us, hey, we need to talk. And boom, they no longer wanted to buy the business. So yeah, Black Swan event was what frightened me the most. I wasn't scared about everything else because we were not hiding anything. It was a small team, clean code base, no big trouble with customers and all, and growing stuff. But Black Swan, scary.
So then you closed, and we can smash cut back to the beginning of this episode when I said, how did it feel when money hit the bank account? And you'd already bought the Lego sets when you hit 5 million. Did you buy any crazy or cool things after the exit?
So what we did, we went to Paris with my girlfriend of 10 years, and we went to a very nice hotel. So this was, I think, our celebration gift to ourselves, because it was also stressful for her, and she was very, helpful during this period. So I think this was the biggest treat we gave to ourselves. I was able to invite my father to MicroConf in New Orleans, so he was with me. So I took, it was a nice holiday with him, and small gift to family, but no big, massive spending.
Aside from the 3 Lamborghinis that now sit out inside, outside of
Aside
your chalet.
From that.
Obviously,
Obviously.
Well, man, huge congrats to you and Kevin. Like, it's really well deserved. You guys executed very well. You worked hard, and you worked on things that mattered, and you shipped a lot quickly, and you were generally right about most of the stuff you were doing. And so I think you're kind of a shining example of someone who can bootstrap or mostly bootstrap to millions in ARR. And, I would have every confidence. I guess this leads to my next question is like, have you ever thought to yourself, and you can say, Rob, too soon, don't ask me this, but have you thought to yourself whether you want to do it again at some point? Because I believe you're still working for the acquirer right now, right?
Yeah.
And so, that'll happen for however long it happens. But when you move on, you have your freedom, you have enough money in the bank that you never have to work again. Have you given any thought to what might be next for you?
A lot. So for now, I'm still working at ScrapingBee until at least early 2026. And for what comes after, I think about it a lot. We talked about it a lot with Kevin. We don't know if it's going to be together or not, but we have lots of ideas. I don't know if I want to do it again from scratch, because those first few years are very, very slow, and I'm not in a position where I want to relive that, because grinding for a year and then after a year only reaching 6K MRR, like, it's rough.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's hard the second time because you want it to be faster, and you're like, you don't want to put in the pain, the motivation. Because the first time it's like, well, I'm doing it to create an impact and to learn and to get rich so that I never have to work again. The second time it's like, how much am I learning this time? I don't need to get rich. I already am. Like, it's like, it calls into question a lot of things.
But what I think I would like to do is to start early on with a small team. It doesn't have to be big, maybe 3-4 people, to really put up something live real quick, to try to fail faster, maybe. But so I definitely want to start something again at some point, but it's probably not going to be the way we did ScrapingBee, because we want to save time.
And you don't have to this time. You have resources. You could acquire something. You could...
Exactly. This is something we talk a lot about also.
Yep. So, Pierre de Wulf, there's so much more to your story, but I'm going to bid you adieu today. If folks want to follow you on X Twitter, you are Pierre de Wulf. It's DEWULF, where you are a prolific and thought-provoking Twitterer. So, thanks so much for joining me. Is there anything else you'd like folks to check out? Like, do you have a personal blog or a YouTube channel I don't know about?
No personal blog. I'm starting posting on LinkedIn a bit more, which was definitely a different audience, but you meet a lot of interesting folks there too. So yeah, for now, that's it.
LinkedIn and next Twitter. Well, thanks again, man. It was great having you on to tell your story.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks again to Pierre for coming on the show. And thanks to you for listening this week and every week. This is Rob Walling signing off from episode 783.